Did you know we have a thriving global community of like-minded ancestral home cooks and homesteaders? Every day on our Discord forum, we are discussing what we're cooking, what we're growing, what we're thinking about, what our latest struggles are, and supporting each other to fully embrace this beautiful lifestyle. As a patron member, you can also choose to access an extra private podcast feed, which includes monthly intimate chats where Andrea and I talk in depth about what's happening in our lives and kitchens. There are over 90 recordings waiting for you there right now. In addition, we've got a massive collection of inspiring and helpful downloads for you, including many recipes and videos. And once a month, you'll get to visit with myself, Andrea, and the community as we come together live and in person. Visit ancestralkitchenpodcast.com for all the details on how to join us. Come, be part of our world and change yours. Us humans have been eating porridge, of which the American oatmeal is just one example, for, as you'll hear in this episode, at least 32,000 years, which places it comfortably in the paleo era. Listen in to hear us cover just some of the history of the word porridge and the comforting dish associated with it, as well as taking a tour of the many, many ways it is made throughout the world. Then we'll focus in on oats, sharing surprises about how oat porridge has been served and eaten in the United Kingdom. We'll also explain the different types of traditional oats used, the best ways to cook porridge, and the myriad ways you can serve it. If you love a bowl of steaming, creamy oatmeal, get ready to wrap your hands around this enlightening, inspiring episode.
Welcome to the Ancestral Kitchen Podcast.
I'm Alison, a European town dweller living in England.
And I'm Andrea, living on a family farm in Northwest Washington State, USA.
Pull up a chair at the table and join us as we talk about eating, cooking, and living with ancestral food wisdom in a modern world kitchen.
Hello, Alison. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you, Andrea. How are you?
I'm also quite well, quite good. I am just, actually, it's kind of warm here. It's not freezing cold. I was outside multiple times this morning with the generator, as you know, and I had bundled up to go out because I was expecting it to be freezing, but it actually wasn't that cold. It was just kind of weird, but okay.
That's happened here. We had snow
same
last week, and now it's gone really mild. So I think we're kind of, we've got some kind of
the
parallel
kids were
thing
sledding, and we've still got a pile of snow that Camille had heaped up. So, interesting. I'm always surprised by how many similarities there are between you and I and the way we think. When we were recently trying to choose some fonts, and we both voted the same first and the same second and the same maybe third alternate.
Yeah.
And then when we had the logo, we both voted our same favorite, same second favorite, and same nope. And then even when I wanted as a surprise to send Gabriel a book for Christmas, and you picked up the package and you thought, this feels like the one I got in. They're from the same author and the same series, and we've never discussed those books before, ever. Which is so funny, but you did get him a different one in the series, thank goodness.
Yes.
So I just thought that was really funny. So, wondering what you've eaten, because I always want to know.
Yeah. We had leftovers, but intentional leftovers. I guess they're still leftovers. I made a big batch of a minestrone soup. And I think a kind of minestrone's sort of a catch-all really now for me. But it's a tomatoey soup. And we had, I made the biggest saucepan I own. I made a massive one a couple of days ago with onions and celery and mushrooms and butternut squash, which is delicious, still going and still beautiful, even though, it's New Year. Lots of kale, lots of cavolo nero. It was the dark kale, which, you can just cook that for forever and it still tastes amazing. Some cabbage, a few of the Homodod's peas, which I cooked in the pressure cooker beforehand. And I'm gluten-free at the moment, so I didn't put any spelt pasta in it, which I sometimes do. I actually just left it as it was, didn't put anything in. And then I've portioned it out. Some of it's in the freezer now. And I think, I'll just maybe cook some rice if I want to put extra rice in and stir it into that portion. Maybe I'll put some millet in. Maybe I won't put anything in. It's got the squash in there, so it's already got some carb in it. And then I was going to serve it with meatballs. I was going to cook meatballs with it. But when I was doing it a couple of days ago, it took me so long to chop everything, and I wanted to do some reading, and I could feel myself getting a bit kind of angsty because I could see my reading time going out the window. And I thought, I've still got to make all these meatballs, I've got to shape them and fry them. And I just thought, I'm just going to put the ground beef into the minestrone. It'll be fine, So I separated it as much as I could with my hands and stirred it in. And so it's kind of like a ground beef minestrone, easy soup thing. And I froze a load, and then we kept some in the fridge. And I had that today with a slice of gluten-free bread, which I made, which was millet, rice, buckwheat, psyllium husk, and I think that was it. Which turned out really nice.
There's something so
and then some butter on that.
Safe, maybe that feeling of having some frozen soup, where you just know there's a meal I can eat.
I just like
right
it
away if I need it.
Yeah, it's just there. And it doesn't, on the days when we're really busy, maybe Gabriel's got an activity going on, Rob's recording someone, or, something's going on, I'm trying to work. Some of it I put in those super cubes that we've both got, those individually portioned things. And so even then I know that, if, say, Gabriel's got a packed lunch and he's going out, I could just pop 2 of those out for Rob and I. I don't have to defrost one that's intended for 3 and then have some left over. I try to mix it up a bit in the freezer, and I feel calmer when I know that that's in the freezer, because if I don't have the time, then it's there. It makes a difference.
The girls are talking. Well, I was going to say that the girls are talking about super cubes just yesterday in the Discord.
Oh yeah,
and I think. Rachel and Molly both got them for Christmas, and so people were saying, what should we put in them? And there's, I guess, different people who kind of have a platform talking about what they freeze in their super cubes and dinner menus and things like that, which is kind of cool. So that was interesting, a little bit to learn about.
What about you? Have you had some breakfast, or
I did actually have breakfast, but what I had last night was a meal that we have almost every Monday. So I was going to say what it was, which is we make pasta, usually the macaroni elbow shape, which Jacob was going to bring them in the other day, and he said, "What is that pasta you want me to get? The arm or the wrist or something?" I was like, the elbow pasta. But I made myself a small amount of gluten-free pasta because I don't have a lot of it yet, but I just have a little bit. And then Jacob made cheese sauce, the recipe from the Nourishing Tradition for Children. And then I opened a can of sardines. So it's just pasta, then we put cheese sauce on top, and then I put sardines on top of mine.
Nice.
The kids would eat it if I tossed it in, but I had then to deal with the baby got really fussy, and then by the time I came back with the sardines, they were already eating. So I was like, whatever, I'm just going to eat it on mine.
Okay.
But it's okay. But that's a really good, simple meal that we usually have on Mondays.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. And does Jacob always make the cheese sauce?
Yeah,
or was that
that's usually his job. Usually
normally?
He does that lunch. Yeah. Because he could do it all on his own. So it was handy. And I can't remember if I told you, Allison, but my life changed over Christmas because Gary and the kids all got together and plotted, and they got me a food processor, which, I've never had one. And I've been very jealous of yours. No, we talked about it way back in the beginning because you use it for shredding sauerkraut, because I was always wondering, how do you get those tiny shreds? But if the only thing I did with it was shred cheese, I would be happy. I do not like shredding cheese.
Yeah.
But I was able to shred 5 pounds of cheese in the amount of time it usually takes me to dread shredding cheese. So...
Yeah, well, you've got so many children that, when you shred cheese and you like cheese, that's a lot of cheese, isn't it?
What I told Jacob was, well, since we have it out and it's like already got cheese on it, we'll just shred this whole thing. And then I told him we could even separate them and put them back in the freezer or do whatever we want. So I just figured, use it for all it's worth when it's out. So.
Do you know where your sardines come from? I just thinking about sardines because, Gable does have tin fish sometimes because he doesn't have egg, which is a bit of a downer. Yeah. And also he's not, I'm not completely convinced he's okay with dairy, particularly cow's dairy. So he doesn't have a lot of cheese. And so we do rely for him on fish. And I've always found it quite hard to find tin fish that I feel happy about. And I wondered, do you have a better supply over there of tin fish, or have you not addressed that bit yet?
So ours comes from Maine, and it's this brand called Bar Harbor, and they come in pretty big tins, like almost 7 ounce, which is good because if I'm opening one, maybe I want to like mix it into something for the whole family. I mean, you'd use probably 2 for everybody, but... It's nice, big ones, and I buy them through Azure Standard because I can buy cases of them.
Okay.
But I also get their mackerel, so I get their sardines and their mackerel, and we really like them both. And I think the hard thing is finding sardines that aren't packed in soybean oil. So
really?
No, not even kidding. Oysters, too. If you've ever looked for canned smoked oysters, I mean, soybean oil. It's everywhere.
Wow.
Or sunflower seed oil or whatever, some kind of a seed oil that's probably rancid. Yeah. So these ones are just the sardines and salt. So there's no extras. And Brittany Elliott in the Discord group, she's going gluten-free and she's egg-free and dairy-free as well. So you could probably find some crossover ideas with her for Gabriel because she's been doing that for a while.
Yeah, thank you. I will. Okay, should we move on?
Let me tell you what we've got.
I've got a lot to talk about
today. Recording. We have a review from Molly Maverick titled "The Grandmas I Never Had." She said, okay, I did have grandmas, and neither one of these ladies are old enough to be my grandma. But the way that they teach me about and inspire me to pursue an old-fashioned kitchen, home, and life feels like the kind of thing a loving grandma does. I'm constantly thankful for their wisdom and passion on all things ancestral. Every word here on the podcast and all of the interactions in the online community they've created fuel me in my quest for a meaningful, beautiful life. Oh, I love that. Yes, thank you, Molly.
Thank you, Molly. I'm glad you said that we weren't old enough to be your grandmas, because I know Andrea isn't, but I'm kind of heading in that direction.
If we started very
young. That's really, really wonderful.
And that our children started very young.
Maybe, yeah.
We could pull it off.
yeah, maybe. I feel like I kind of resonate with what she said because, part of the reason I started this journey, on my side is because I had grandmas, but they didn't teach me about anything that, we talk about or anything, the journey that I've been on around food. And I feel the lack of that, very definitely. I feel the lack of that and of roots, kind of a feeling of like, well, where am I? What is this stuff happening in the kitchen? What is this food? And to part of me going on this quest was to try to re-embody that energy, to find that somewhere and to create it with community, create it with learnings, create it with practical steps in the kitchen. So it's really lovely that Molly said that.
Yes.
Thank you,
Molly.
Molly.
Ancestral kitchen. You were connecting to your ancestors, even if they were a few steps back. So,
yeah, exactly. Before we dive into the topic for today, I do want to talk about the pork book, which, if you haven't listened to our first episode of 2026, do go back and listen to it. And we have a book which Andrea lovingly put together and laid out, which goes along with that episode, which is selling really well and people are loving it and talking about it and cooking up the recipes in it. You can find the book at ancestralkitchenpodcast.com/pork. And do, if you get it and you cook the recipes from it, do let us know how you find them and which ones are your favourites. Because we're really excited to start this year, even just the first episode, and we got a cookbook out.
Neither of us saw that coming.
No, exactly. And I was like, Christmas, I was like, oh, really? Are we doing another cookbook? Which is nice. I also wanted to say, although there isn't a special download for this episode, there is a very relevant one which I've put out recently, which is my heritage oat collection, which has 3 oat recipes in it, and all of them are historic, and there's information on kind of how they were originally made and what the recipes are, and then you get the full recipes. That's a PDF which you can download and or print off, and that's available on my site, which is ancestralkitchen.com/heritage oats, or one word. Just put your details in there and you can get hold of that. And that's kind of related to what we're going to talk about today, which is another oat dish. Let's go to an ad break first and we will come back. If you're into ancestral eating, you'll know that liver is a superfood, full of vitamin A, K, and a whole host of B vitamins, plus many essential minerals. It has an exceptional nutrient profile and is a staple of traditional healthy diets. But it's not always easy to consistently get liver into our lives. Finding a good supply, cooking it so it actually tastes good, and getting all of our family to eat it. These things can be hard, especially when we're busy or travelling. That's where Andrea and I turn to liver capsules. They give us all the benefits of liver without having to worry about the sourcing, the preparation, or the eating. One Earth Health produces organ capsules from 100% grass-fed New Zealand-raised cattle. As a podcast listener, you can get 15% off your first order and 5% off subsequent orders by using the link in our show notes. And each time you order, you'll also be supporting us to continue making this podcast. Okay, so this episode is all about porridge. And I wanted to start this episode completely with the transparency up front, because I didn't really realise until I started doing this podcast with you, Andrea, that porridge is not really, for you, is not really what porridge is for me. So I'm going to ask you, what does the word porridge, first of all, mean to you, Andrea?
If I hear porridge, I think of Goldilocks. It's
not a story.
Necessarily a word that I hear people use in relation to what they're about to eat. Although people might. It's not like nobody knows what it means, but I've never heard anybody call their breakfast. I mean, maybe if it's in the recipe name, they would say it.
Yeah.
But it's not a colloquial term around here anyway.
And so what does the word oatmeal mean to you?
Oatmeal makes me think of a hot bowl of cooked rolled oats, usually served with milk. In our house, we use maple syrup, and we have for many years, but I always grew up with brown sugar. And if you go to, I suppose this is standard American food, if you go to a hotel, then you go look in their breakfast area, and they will have oatmeal with brown sugar, and then there'll usually be a side of raisins as well. So I'm assuming that brown sugar is pretty standard for people.
Yeah. Okay. So over this side of the Atlantic, and also in Australia, and kind of any of those territories that colonial England kind of got their fingers into, the word porridge means basically what you just described oatmeal as. So a bowl of hot cooked oats, in modern days usually rolled oats, often cooked with milk. And we don't often use maple syrup because it's kind of not so local over here, but usually with brown sugar or blueberries or some kind of fruit, some nuts, perhaps honey on it. That's what porridge is to British people. Oatmeal is not what you associate it with. Oatmeal actually means, to me, stone ground oats that are raw, i.e. not cooked oats. So the word meal, like we would talk about a flour being a meal, meal, oatmeal means in British English, stone ground raw oats. So we'll talk a little bit more about the word oatmeal later, but I wanted to kind of bring that up to begin with because this episode is about porridge and it's about porridge from a British perspective. But for everyone who's listening in the States, I mean oatmeal. For you, that's oatmeal. And I'm going to keep calling it porridge because I'm British.
I think that there maybe is a little bit of revival behind the word because it does pop up in kind of quaint little recipe titles here and there. So I think sometimes anything that smacks of being British is like, yeah, let's just say that word because it sounds better.
It's like retro. Yeah, it sounds good. Okay, so the word porridge was first recorded in 1530, and the etymology of it is really quite interesting. Pottage, which probably you've heard of, is a kind of a medieval dish that's like a thick stew or soup, and that comes from the French word potage, which is potage, which means in French something cooked in a pot. So basically it just means a pot with bits in it, vegetables and meat and all that kind of stew. That word pottage developed into porridge, but possibly influenced by a Latin word, porrum. Porrum means leek, and leek was used to make a thick stew called a porre. So maybe the kind of etymologists think that maybe that word was influenced by that. By the 17th century, the word porridge meant cereal with milk or water. So it kind of changed from pottage being the stew that often did have grains in it as well, to porridge just being a cereal cooked with milk or water. Scotland has a word which is similar but slightly different, parritch, which I'm not saying it in a Scottish accent, and I'm not going to because I will just destroy it, but it's parritch. And you sometimes see that on Scottish kind of packets of things. That was first recorded in Scotland in 1596. Ireland had a different term for porridge called stirabout, which they called stirabout, I guess because it's kind of stirred. And interestingly, the fact that you call porridge oatmeal probably has something to do with how the dish travelled from Europe to you over in the States, because immigrants from Europe brought porridge to America with the word as well in the 1600s and 1700s. But because oats weren't grown in the places where they were, they used the same method and then they applied it to a local grain, which was usually corn. So they would make corn porridges instead. And so I think, although I've not read this anywhere, I think the reason why Americans call oat porridge oatmeal is probably to distinguish it from a corn porridge.
Yeah.
Because if they were cooking corn porridges, then when they got to oats, they were like, oh, well, maybe I'm going to call this one oatmeal.
It's kind of like what you said in the pork episode, where in the Chinese language, meat, the pork is meat. Yeah, and then you have to say specifically sheep.
Exactly.
Meat or whatever.
To make it that, yeah. And because I also think oatmeal wasn't already used. In the UK, you wouldn't call a porridge oatmeal because oatmeal was already a term meaning stone ground raw oats. Whereas because the US didn't have a tradition of kind of local oats ground in a stone mill, that word wasn't already associated with raw oats. So it could be taken and used to describe a cooked dish. Interestingly, Quaker, who in air quotes invented rolled oats, they didn't invent rolled oats till the 1780s, and that's where oats really became quite popular in the US.
What do you mean, quote unquote, invented?
Well, they didn't invent them. A German guy who worked for a milling company, invented or patented the technology to squash oats rather than to stone ground them in roller mills. But that company was then bought by someone who was bought by Quaker.
Oh.
So Quaker didn't really invent
So you
rolled
mean the
oats, even though
company,
they kind of
not
claimed
the-
to.
Not the people.
Yeah.
Quakers. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. So the US has only really known rolled oats for oatmeal.
True.
Not oatmeal. And when Quaker had that breakfast cereal kind of patented and ready, they ran the first national magazine adverts for breakfast cereal, and at the same time gave away free packets of rolled oats to people. So rolled oats then kind of conquered the whole of the US, and really most people that I've talked to in the States, unless they have particularly, gone into their British background, don't know about stone ground oats.
I think we have to thank Bob's Red Mill for bringing anything like that back into American consciousness with the Scottish oats and the hot cereals. Those sort of terms that he uses are probably the primary place that we saw it come back.
Yeah, you're right. Bob's Red Mill is the only place that I've found in the US that does create and sell an oatmeal. You can buy it, and it's called, as you said, Scottish Oats. There are other companies that import oatmeal from the UK, and you can buy them in kind of, stores that are British. But I've not been able to find a company in the US other than Bob's Red Mill that creates raw stone ground oats. So you're right, it is in part due to them that kind of has become a little bit more popularised in the US. Okay, I wanted to talk a little bit about how long we've been eating porridge, and I just say ages, absolutely ages. There's people who are paleo like to think that paleo man lived on meat and veg alone, but he didn't. He ate grains. And the best exploration I have of that is in Italy, in southern Italy, the archaeologists there discovered a 32,600-year-old pestle in a cave, which had remnants of swollen gelatinized oat grains in it. Not just normal oat grains, but oat grains that have been gelatinized, i.e. they've been cooked with water. And they put this through their, equipment to find out more about it. And they came to the conclusion that the methods that these people were using 32,000 years ago were multi-step. They were drying the grain, they were heating the grain, they were grinding the grain, and then they were cooking the grain.
A lot of
Basically,
investment.
they were making porridge in the Stone Age. So we've been eating it a very long time. And as you know, as you come closer to us through history, you find in Denmark there's evidence from 4,200 BCE. The Tolland man, who's a bog body, died in 400 BCE. He had porridge in his stomach. In that case, that porridge was mostly barley. But as we will talk about in a minute, porridge is not just oats. Okay. Do you have any questions, Andrea, before I move on?
This. Keep it coming.
No? Okay. Cool. Okay, let's talk about variety then. Porridge overtly is associated with oats because of Scotland. Scotland has done a great job of exporting porridge around the world. And when people think of the word porridge, they think of oats. But porridges have been and are still made with so many other grains. Basically, it's just a starch or a grain-based stew. So if you think about other types of cereal stews or porridges, we have congee, which is made with rice in Japan. Wheat, cream of wheat. I know you have that there. That's basically a wheat gruel. Barley porridge is made with very often. And in the UK, before oats became popular, a lot of the porridges were barley. Any sort of mush made with corn is a porridge. So polenta is a porridge. There are toles that are made in South America are porridges. Mush or grits are porridges. You can make porridge with millet, and they do that a lot in Africa. There's a recipe on my site for millet polenta, which I will link in the show notes. Buckwheat porridge can be made with buckwheat, which is kind of kasha, which we've talked about before. Porridge is also made with sorghum in places where sorghum is grown and is a staple grain. Porridge can be made with rye. There's another recipe on my site for oliebrod, which is a traditional Danish porridge made from stale rye bread and beer, which doesn't sound that appealing, but it's absolutely delicious.
I want to try that. It sounds pretty good.
It's so good. It really is. If you got homemade rye bread or rye bread that's been made by, an artisan baker, good rye bread, it is so delicious with the beer. It's like a dark beer. I'll put a link to that in the show notes too, my recipe. You do not have to use grains. So traditionally, in a lot of cultures, roots have been used. In Polynesia, there's a porridge called poi, which is made with taro, which has often been fermented. I think maybe there's a reference to that in Weston Price's book. I vaguely remember.
I do know that.
You can use potato.
Oh, I was just going to say that I know she references ugali, which is that, I don't know how many places in Africa make that, but I know that our Kenyan friends made ugali for the babies.
I remember.
They get there's actually special bags with like little teddy bears on it and stuff. They gave us one.
What's that made of?
Oh, I do not remember. I have no idea. Probably. But
it is a porridge.
Sure. I mean, it's a porridge basically, but I feel like I remember it because they gave it to us when Jacob was a baby, and I feel like I remember it being kind of like a cream of wheat situation. But you can ferment it, so
in the same way as you might do with that fermented taro porridge. Legumes also have been made into porridges. If you think about peas pottage, which is an English dish which has been around for centuries, that's basically a pea porridge. If you are excited about porridges, like me, you can look up porridge on Wikipedia and you will find pages and pages
Never
of
thought
reading
about doing that.
and pictures of people's porridges. I've been there a lot. Because I feel like, there has to be a porridge that listeners haven't tried. I've just given you a massive long list, and I'd be surprised if everyone listening has tried every single one of those porridges. And they are really good. You can play around with them and put different add-ins in, and to explore grains, they are a really simple, easy way to play around with different grains.
I don't know if this qualifies or if there's ancestral precedent for this, but in my I guess misinformed paleo years, then there was this porridge that I really liked to make because I felt like porridge, but doesn't have grains in it. And you would grind up different nuts and coconut flakes and things like that, and then kind of cook it. And it kind of gives you that feeling of eating oatmeal. It was really nice, though.
Yeah. Yeah, I never did that. It sounds nice. Okay, so those are lots of different non-oat porridges. So do have a play with those if you're feeling like you want to experience a different type of porridge. Before we carry on and talk about oats, let's take a break.
Hey, you washing the dishes. Been there. You've heard Allison and I talk over and over about her love of rye sourdough bread. Well, I might actually call it an obsession, but that's neither here nor there. Now you can make Allison's rye sourdough in your own kitchen with her as your teacher. And she's a really good teacher. Rye is economical, it's delicious, and full of nutrients and low in gluten. There's a reason why it has been a darling of bread bakers for centuries. Make it into sourdough, as Allison will show you in her course, Rye Sourdough Bread, Mastering the Basics. And you've got an amazing, tasty, and nutritious staple in your kitchen. It's traditional and it's nutritional. In this course, you'll learn everything there is to know about how she creates and maintains her rye sourdough starter, all about whole grain sourdough rye, including the key differences between baking with rye and wheat, how to make 2 loaves, an everyday rye sandwich bread, and a delicious Russian-style dark rye loaf, and what to do with your sourdough discard, including video walkthroughs for sourdough pancakes and a tasty, sweet, spiced cake. Head to www.ancestralkitchen.com/rye.
Okay, So I want to focus in this section on oatmeal porridge. So porridge made with oats. There are many different types of oats, and they can all be cooked into porridge. Whatever, even oat groats, the whole oat grain can be cooked into porridge. I have an article on my site which details all of the different types of oats and how they've been traditionally used, and gives you information on how to cook them. So I will link that in the show notes. So don't feel like you kind of have to take notes or worry here. You can go and look at that article later. As we talked about earlier, rolled oats are ubiquitous now. Really, whenever anyone thinks about oatmeal or porridge, depending on what side of the Atlantic they are, they think about rolled oats. Rolled oats cook really quickly. Even if you get the jumbo ones, they cook quite quickly. But as we know, because the world has to be quicker and breakfast has to be quicker, and because companies are trying to compete with boxed cereal, which is so quick, you just pour it out and pour your milk over it. Oats have been made smaller and processed more. 10 minutes is too long for a porridge. 2 minutes is too long for a porridge. We need instant porridge. And you can buy oat flakes that look like bits of sawdust and make porridge out of them if you wish. I would suggest you don't, but it is possible. And all of that, even the rolled oats, are not traditional. Traditionally, porridge was made with oatmeal, which, as I explained, over here in the UK is stone ground oats. So that is oat groats that have been passed through a mill where the stones are made of stone rather than metal, roller mills. And that oatmeal can come in various sizes because it's been sieved traditionally. As it comes out of the mill, it is sieved into different sizes. So you can have fine oatmeal, which is almost like a flour. You can have medium oatmeal, which is a bit bigger, or you can have pinhead oatmeal. Pinhead is about the same size as the steel cut oats that you have in the States. So if you ever see in my recipes the word pinhead, then you could just use steel cut oats. Steel cut oats are different because they've been run through a steel mill, whereas pinhead oatmeal's gone through a stone mill. Traditionally, the cultures that ate porridge in the UK used the pinhead or the medium oatmeal, so quite big oatmeal. Alongside those oats, there are also naked oats. So this is where I have to get a bit technical. All oats that come to us, all normal oats that come to us, have been kilned before they arrive at our doors, even if they're oat groats, the whole grain. And the reason that happens is because oats have a hull that adheres to them really tightly. And in order to get that hull off, because it's indigestible, they are put through kind of big tumblers, and the oat groat gets damaged. In that damaging, air gets into the grain, which causes an oxidization process and makes a fat in the oats go rancid. So to counteract that, normal oats are put in a kiln to kill off the enzymes so that when the hull's taken off, they won't go rancid. Is that clear, Andrea?
No, that does. Yeah. That does make sense.
Yeah, cool. Okay. So any oats that you buy, if they are not naked oats, will have been cooked, kilned before they get to you. Naked oats are different. So naked oats have like a paper thin hull, and you can take those off without damaging the oat grain. They taste different because they haven't been kilned, they haven't been processed at all. And Lizzie, who is a supporter of the podcast and I'm mentoring at the moment, she's working on a grain project which she's bringing into the world with a kind of a flavour wheel. She has done a lot of tasting. She previously was a professional taster, and she's tasted normal oats. And last week she tasted naked oats for the first time, and she told us all on Discord just how different the naked oats tasted to the normal oats. They're kind of a greener flavour and less toasty because they haven't been kilned. So that was a long way of saying, in the past in the UK, naked oats were used to make a porridge. They were traditionally grown in Cornwall, and strangely China, which is not what I expected when I did the research. They were different genus in China, but they were still naked oats. And they were used to make a porridge called Gertie milk, which is a traditional Cornish naked oat porridge, which I learnt of thanks to Harriet Gendel, who is a lady who's doing her PhD on naked oats.
That is amazing.
Which is quite cool. There are also black oats, which I've talked about before, and we've talked about in some of the private podcasts. There's been a revival in Wales of black oats. Generally, with flavour, the less processed, the more flavour your oats will have. Kilning does impart that toasty flavour, so the naked oats don't have it. You can also grind and roll your own oats. So if you have a mock mill, you could put oat groats in that and make a kind of an oatmeal with it. I don't put mine below number 3 because oats are a particularly fatty grain, and if you try to grind them really finely, they will kind of gum up your meal because of the fats in them.
It's good to know. I think that question pops up just every so periodically in the Discord. If you can put oats in the mock mill.
Yeah.
I did not know.
Through
That's
the mock
good to
mill.
know.
Yeah. Yes, you can. Also, if you don't want stone ground oats, but you would like rolled oats, you can roll your own oats. And some of the more expensive mills do come with a roller. And I also know you can buy from Mock Mill a machine called the Flake Lover, which electronically kind of flakes your oats. You put them in the top and then you get rolled oats flaked out the bottom.
Wow.
We have a machine called a Marcato Marga, which is an Italian small steel roller mill, which we crank by hand, and we put oats in the top and roll them through and make our own rolled oats. There's an article on my site called How to Roll Your Own Oats and 3 Good Reasons to Do That. So if you're interested in rolling your own oats, go and have a read of that. I would say basically it's a game changer. When we got that roller mill and we started rolling our own oats, the flavour that you get from them is incomparable. You know, we've talked about how when you grind flour and you leave it on a shelf and you buy it, in a package, and how long has it been on the shelf, and you're leaving it in your shelf and everything is kind of degrading. You think about it, it's the same with rolled oats. Although they've not been made into tiny particles, they have been, the grain's been opened and it's been squashed, and much more of the grain is exposed to air. And you get all the degradation in flavour and nutrients that happens with that. When you roll your own, you're literally rolling them the night before you have the porridge, and you can taste the difference in them. You really can. So if you're thinking about possibly doing that, I would recommend it. Okay. The one other thing that I wanted to say when we're talking about variety and different types of oats is that oatmeal porridge belongs to the whole of the UK and Northern Europe, not just Scotland. Scotland has done a great job of exporting it and making that part of their culture. And because so many Scottish people went over to the States through history, through the last few hundred years, there is a lot of association with porridge and Scotland. But Wales has such a long tradition of using oats to make porridge, and Yorkshire, which is in northeast England, and Derbyshire and Ireland. Wherever oats grew in the UK, porridge was an absolute staple.
So how do we make porridge? Get us to this part.
How do we make the best porridge?
Get us to the eating part.
Okay. So I think that, if I went back and I talked to Scottish people and Welsh people and Irish people throughout history, they would all argue about what makes the best porridge.
That would be entertaining.
Just like when you...
My mother said...
Just like when you go to... do it this way. No, don't put the salt in here. No, exactly. I think they might argue, or they might just say, because most of them were struggling to put food on the table, remember, they might just say the best porridge was the porridge that was there, ready for them to eat, to put their spoons into. I think from my perspective, the best answer to that question is probably to share the ways that we make porridge in our home, because I think that makes the best porridge. we buy naked oats and we roll them at home using the Mercato Marga, like I said. We also have in the cupboard medium oatmeal and pinhead oatmeal, which has been ground in a stone mill in the UK. Naked oats are my favourite, and they make a great porridge either in the pan, or if breakfast is busy, which it often is in this house, we cook them in the Instant Pot. I know quite a few people who are on Discord do their oats in the Instant Pot, and I think it's not quite as nice as doing in the saucepan and stirring them. But, you know, if you want to get breakfast on the table, you can just put it all in the Instant Pot the night before, press the button, and in the morning, that's it. Your porridge is there.
We love instant.
Instant, yeah, instant.
Your instant oats.
Breakfast
only take 12 hours.
Yeah, exactly. I always use water. We don't use milk because we rarely drink straight milk. So we've just kind of got used to water. Sometimes I will ferment the oats, which we will talk about a little bit later. And there is an episode back in the annals of the podcast called Fermenting Oats, which you can listen to if you're particularly interested in that. So sometimes I ferment them, sometimes I don't. There is a difference in flavour. If you ferment them, you know, you do actually taste that kind of sour flavour. It comes through. And I kind of like to have a bit of variety. Toppings are very personal between, you know, the three of us here in my household have very, very different toppings on our porridge. You might do them all at the same time, you know, in the Instant Pot, and it goes beep and we're kind of dishing it out from there or dishing it out from the saucepan. But the three of us have particularly different toppings. So I've just got a list here of some of the toppings that we use. Kefir, milk kefir, sometimes oat milk, cream, butter, olive oil, linseed, crunchy nuts, coconut oil, vanilla, essential oils. They go really well in porridge. Miso, almond, peanut butter, vanilla, salt. I thought you'd like the essential oils bit, Andrea. I have a cinnamon, the cinnamon bark that you sent me in the cupboard. And sometimes I just, you know, we will just put a drop. It's so strong, so you don't need much. But literally like a drop of cinnamon oil in the porridge and stir it around. And it goes amazing. So well.
Especially if then you're putting some crunchy nuts on top of that. That sounds really good.
Really, really yummy. I like to put, because I don't have sweet things, I've kind of got used to my porridge with nuts and linseed and olive oil. I like that. I will put salt on it. Gable has miso in his porridge almost every morning. Miso and linseed and olive oil. Rob always puts kefir in his bowl, and often we will put collagen powder in our porridge. Not at all traditional, but it gives us more protein if we feel like we need it.
In it pretty well? Wow.
Yeah, just dissolves and you just stir it in. As long as you stir it as soon as you put it in, it goes in absolutely
I think I know the answer to this, but is sweet porridge a fairly new invention?
Yeah, so we'll talk about how it's traditionally served, but all throughout history until sweet things became more readily available to the masses, which in England, you know, was part of the Industrial Revolution when there was kind of leftover components from making sugar, and that was cheaper in the form of treacle, which is kind of like molasses, more cheaply available to the masses. Until that was around, porridge was really not traditionally sweetened routinely. Although I think sometimes honey would be used, you know, because honey is a traditional, sweetener in the UK and has been around for a very, very long time. But obviously honey was very special.
Yeah.
And on a daily basis, I don't think most families had access to it. So porridge has always been traditionally a salted dish, not a sweet dish. And, you know, if you go to there is a porridge championships in Scotland, which has been going a few years. And every year they have people compete to make the best porridge. You know, they've got the porridge judges and they have to use stone ground oats. So they have to use oatmeal. They cannot use rolled oats because that was not traditional. And they are making traditional porridge, and they all use salt. They would not make a sweet porridge. If you talk to any kind of traditional Scotsman who kind of cares and knows about his heritage, I think he would probably think you were a soft English person for having a porridge sweet.
Yeah. Oh, that makes sense. Can't see those people riding their horses off into the misty mountains with their sweetened oatmeal at their side.
Yeah, exactly. It took me a while to get used to salted porridge, but I would say now I don't feel the need to have porridge sweet. Really, I like salt in porridge. I feel like it brings out the flavour of the grain more than smothering it in sweet things. Maybe that's because we use such good raw ingredients. We talk about that so much. When you have good ingredients that you're starting with, then you don't need to add so many things to those dishes. So if I'm starting with naked oats or oatmeal that I've ground in the mock meal, or normal oats that I've flaked myself in the Mercato Marga, then that raw ingredient has more flavour in the first place. And we all know that salt kind of brings out flavour, and so just putting the salt in is often enough.
Well, I saw your snarky note up above that you were too nice to read, which was basically, well, you'd have to sweeten those nasty little instant oats.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yes, you would. Well, you would if you buy those packets of instant oats that Quakers sell in the supermarket. You're going to want to sweeten them because they're like sawdust.
Yeah.
They're cardboard.
I've definitely
so you're going to pour it on.
They're pretty sweet, but I can imagine that if you were eating that sawdust or what does Megan call the bits of tea at the bottom of the barrel that they put in tea bags, not very good stuff. But it would be a punishment to be like, oh, I'm not going to eat sweets, so I'm going to eat this without it. Look, I'm so Spartan, I'm suffering for health. That's not what we're doing. we're not suffering over here.
Get hold of some oats and flake them yourself. Get hold of some naked oats and try it.
I've never flaked oats, so that's going to be a new Rubicon for me.
It's so delicious. It really is. Not to say that you can't put all these different toppings on. You can. They do enhance the dish, but through having good ingredients, I've come to really appreciate porridge as it was originally eaten in this country, which is just with salt. Okay, I wanted to talk a little bit about pinhead oatmeal and making a good porridge with pinhead oatmeal. So for everyone who's in the States, that's kind of, as I said, equivalent to steel cut oatmeal. So if you can get hold of steel cut oatmeal, it makes a very good porridge. Really, it's the best kind of grain to make a standard oat porridge with, much better than flaked oats, unless you flaked them yourself. Because the bits are kind of bigger and haven't been processed as much, it needs longer cooking time because it needs time to absorb the water. So the best way I've found of cooking pinhead or steel cut oatmeal is to soak it in 4 times its water by weight and then boil it.
How long do you soak it?
And cook it on low for 30 minutes. Soak it overnight. So the night before, if you just want to make a pinhead oatmeal, you just put your oatmeal in a bowl, soak it in 4 times its water by weight. In the morning, bring it to the boil and then cook it on low for 30 minutes. There is another way, which I could share if you want me to, Andrea, which is more, it's more labour intensive, but I've tried both ways and it does make a difference to the finished porridge. Okay, so for this one, as I said, it's more labour intensive. But the day before you want to eat your porridge, soak your oats in 1.5 times the water by volume. So 1 cup of the steel cut oats to 1.5 cups of water. So do that the morning before you want to eat the oatmeal. So say you want the oatmeal for Sunday breakfast, do that Saturday morning. Then in the evening, Saturday evening, put all of that soaked oatmeal and water in a pan. Then add another 3 cups of water. Bring it to the boil. Simmer it for 30 minutes. Make sure you're stirring because otherwise it will stick to the bottom of the pan. When that's done, turn it off. Add salt. I do 3/4 teaspoon of salt to 180 grams of oats. That feeds 3 of us. Obviously, you'll need more salt if you're going to up your oats from 180 grams. Stir the salt around. Put the lid on the saucepan. Just push it to the side of your cooker and leave it there overnight. Then in the morning, this is Sunday morning now we're talking about. I told you this was complicated, didn't I? You reheat that pan. So just turn the pan on, let it heat up a little bit, put your wooden spoon in, stir it around. It will be quite thick at the beginning, but as it starts to heat up, it will loosen up. And then when it's reheated, it's ready to eat. And it sounds more complicated than it is. Once you get into a routine of doing it like that, then you kind of get used to it. But the thing about doing it this way is that traditionally porridge was cooked in a cast iron pan on a open fire or a range for a very, very long time. And that allowed that steel cut, chunky oatmeal to really hydrate fully and just become something that it can't do when you only cook it for 30 minutes.
Kind of reminds me of your, and when you cook the risotto and you add the water or the broth a little at a time and you're heating it and stirring it.
Yes. Yeah. Letting it soak in, letting it absorb, letting it kind of do its thing. We can't easily cook porridge for 3 hours now because we don't have the cast iron pots. It all just sticks to the bottom of our saucepans, and we don't have a range, a very small kind of fire where we can just leave it to the side, like people used to. And so if we tried to cook porridge for 3-4 hours to allow it to really hydrate properly, it's going to be a disaster. And this way mimics what would happen in that 3 and 4 hour cooking time by soaking your oats, then cooking them, and then leaving them on the hob, with it off overnight. And it does taste different. It really does. It's got a different consistency. It just feels different on your tongue. And with steel cut oatmeal, that way that it has more processing is by far my favourite way.
Sounds delicious.
To eat oats. And it's not much hands-on, it's
Hardly
half an hour hands-on, really. The rest of it, soaking, 30 minutes of hands-on in the evening, and then turn it off and just reheat it in the morning.
And I would probably just do that evening part. If I do anything breakfast related, it's usually when I'm putting away everything from dinner, doing the dishes. So I'm kind of in the kitchen.
Exactly.
Slapping around.
Anyway. Yeah, so you can turn around every 5 minutes and give it a stir. It's not a problem because you're there anyway. Yeah, exactly. It's in practice, it works really quite well. Just sounds a bit daunting when I read it all out. Okay, so having asked me, Andrea, what's the best way to make porridge and listen to me tell you what we top our porridge with, tell me how you make porridge over there and what toppings you use.
Well, I don't want to say now that you said all these awesome ways. Well, no, really, it's pretty simple. It's more or less the Nourishing Traditions version, except I don't always soak it. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't, like you said. Not really related to if I'm in the mood for the flavor, more related to if I forgot to do it. But I'll do a cup of Scottish oats, which is our favorite. So we don't always buy the Scottish oats, but I throw them in the blender and kind of, I guess I could use the food processor now, and kind of grind them to their rolled oats, to kind of grind them to get them to kind of break up like that. Sorry, Scottish people, don't listen to this part. And then I put, the ratio is 1 cup by volume of the oats to 3 cups of water and a pinch of salt. You can soak that overnight. Sally in Nourishing Traditions has you soak it with some of the water and then add more water the next day, and then put it in a pot. I just put everything in the pot and then I just leave it. I don't fuss with adding more later, and then I don't fuss with using an extra dish. I used to do that, and then I'll realize, what am I doing? I'm just moving it from one dish to another. So I just put it in the pot overnight, and then just simmer it on the stove. So I personally, my preference is butter and salt. You've really gotten me on the non-sweet pancakes and the non-sweet oats. So thank you for that. And then my kids, most of the time, want maple syrup on theirs. But if they have plenty of butter, you could get away with just that too. But they are pretty adamant about the butter now. Yeah. So I also, Jacob brought me breakfast one time. He likes to make breakfast, which is awesome. And he brought me a bowl of breakfast, and it was these oats, and he had taken a bunch of dried apples that we had made and kind of stirred them in. It was so good. So I really like that too.
That sounds nice. I want to know how Gary has his. I know Rob will be interested to hear this. How does Gary eat his porridge?
He doesn't eat porridge.
Oh. So you're just making it for you and the kids?
Yeah. Gary doesn't care for it.
For you.
I'm trying to think if I've ever seen him eat it. Maybe once or twice, but he doesn't usually eat it. So
does he not eat your baked oatmeal that you do either?
I don't know that I've ever offered him baked oatmeal. I'm trying to remember.
No, it's
probably assumed he wouldn't eat it. He might eat. He might. Yeah, he might do. It doesn't sound. It's not as weird as it thinks when you remember that most of our breakfast is just me and the kids. So it's not like he's sitting there not eating.
Yeah, exactly. He's often out.
And then when he's going to be here for breakfast, I'll automatically plan something else. So sorry, Rob.
Yeah, it's an interesting. No, that's fine. I'll tell him anyway. There's an interesting point that I'm going off topic a bit here that I wanted to put in before we go to a break, which is we have had quite a lot of discussions about porridge on the Discord channel recently, the podcast supporter community. And quite a few people have said they can't tolerate porridge in the morning. They can't have oatmeal in the morning, but they're fine with it in the evening. So I think I would say to anyone who's kind of listening to this and thinking, I'm not sure that oatmeal works for me in the morning, to make sure that you're having some protein and some fat with it. If you do, that it's not just you're having kind of sugar on the top. You can put collagen powder. You can put eggs in. I often used to make porridge and stir an egg in, a minute or two before it's finished. And, make sure you've got that butter on it or cream on it. Try it savoury. Or if you still can't, if you don't feel right with it in the morning, do try it in the evening, because it was really interesting to kind of read that quite a lot of people who are in the community were saying, it just sits better with me in the evening.
I did see that. And I was going to say on Gary, if there wasn't such a tradition of sweet porridge that we had both grown up around, he'd probably be more likely to eat it. But he doesn't really care for super sweet things. And so I think the idea of a bowl with, brown sugar on it in the morning is just not appealing to him. Shockers.
It's not really his thing.
And
I can get that.
So maybe if he was presented with it more in a savory version, it would be more appealing.
Yeah, okay. Well, we're going to go to ad break, and I'll come back in a minute and talk to you about a savoury porridge that I've been experimenting with recently. Do you love oats? Want to try your hand at a traditional Scottish oat fermentation? Suans is just that. It was made in Scotland for centuries and will give you both a creamy, easy-to-digest porridge and a tangy probiotic drink. My video course, Suans, the Scottish Oat Ferment, over at the Fermentation School, will guide you through everything you need to know to create these two ancestral foods in your own kitchen, no matter what equipment you have. Head to ancestralkitchen.com/Suans, ancestralkitchen.com/Suans, SOWANS, or click the link in the show notes to get a 10% discount automatically applied. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about Scotland and the way that oats are eating in Scotland now. But I do want to just talk about, as I said, savoury porridge that I've been playing around with a bit. I found a reference to a Yorkshire version of porridge called stirabout, which strangely is the same name that the Irish often called standard porridge. But this is a very particular Yorkshire kind of incarnation of porridge. And there's not a great deal of reference to it in my history books, but I've been experimenting in the kitchen, as I do, and playing around with it. And I've come up with something that's really, really quite tasty. So the idea is that it's oatmeal, porridge oats, cooked in the fat that you've previously fried bacon in.
Ooh.
So I thought, when I first had it, I thought,
sounds like lots of good
nice.
things.
Like, exactly. So I fried off some bacon, which on my side of the Atlantic is back bacon, which doesn't exist, as we've established in America. But I guess you could use streaky bacon, your normal bacon, something with a a good portion of fat on it. I just put that in the cast iron pan, and then I take it out once it's kind of got a bit kind of browned, and there's lots of juices and fat in the bottom of the pan. Take it out and put it on a plate to one side, and then put the oats in the cast iron pan, stir them around, put some water in, and get the bits that might be on the bottom of the pan mixed into that water, and then just keep adding water until you've got the right consistency. I'm cooking for about 30 minutes because I'm using pinhead oatmeal. You could probably do it with rolled oats and it wouldn't take as long to cook. And then my favourite way of serving it has been to cut up the bacon that I previously cooked. I just use scissors because it's simpler, into little strips. Just before I'm about to serve it, pour all that bacon back into the pan, stir it back in. So it's a kind of a bacony, fatty porridge thing with bits of bacon inside. Just delicious already. And then whilst I'm kind of waiting for that to all go round and plating up stuff, I poach an egg for myself, because the boys don't eat eggs, but I do. And then blob my porridge in the middle of the plate to make a little depression in the top and put my poached egg in the top.
That sounds so good.
It's so good. I'm thinking Gary might
I think you would. So take us back to Scotland. You're going all over the place and you keep alluding to Scotland. So they seem pretty critical.
Yeah.
And tell me about how they ate them, and maybe I know you've sort of tantalized me with some tidbits of information. So if you have some more to share.
Yeah. It's really interesting how the Scots ate porridge, because it's, aside from the fact that it was savoury, not sweet, it's very particular, because it was a food that they were eating once, sometimes twice a day after day after day. And so we know when that sort of thing happens, how many traditions kind of grow up around it. So as I said, the Scots ate porridge, which they called plural. So they called porridge them.
Oh. What?
Researchers don't really know why or how that started. They seem to kind of think that it was a term of respect, that they would call porridge they. I don't know. Almost but they always refer to it in the plural.
Semi-anthropomorphized and not as cold as it.
Yeah, exactly. It.
Wow.
So they ate them with salt, and not with just a little bit of salt either. When you look at traditional recipes, I have slightly minimised the salt in the versions that I make at home and in the versions that will go in the book that I'm writing, because when I try it with the amount that it appears to be, although it's quite difficult because they just say 1 spoonful, and you think, well, what spoon are you talking about? Are you talking about this spoon or that spoon? Did they have measuring spoons back then? I don't think so. So what spoons did they use? I don't know. Anyway, that's a whole rabbit hole that I have not got to the bottom of yet. But I tend to just ease off the salt a bit. It traditionally was very salty, very salty. And I've thought a bit about why that was, and I think that the Scots were very, very active. When you read about how much porridge they were eating and what they were doing every day on the land, on the crofts, to subsist, the animals, the ground that they were looking after, the work that they had to do is just amazing. And, they would have, I guess, sweated a lot even in that cold weather. And so I think they would have needed salt. And I think, they didn't have the sweetener. And so at that point, if you want to bring the flavour out in something, then you're going to add salt. Really, it really does bring the flavors out. So
it seems logical. Your ideas.
No one really explains in any of the books why they put salt in it. I don't think there was a choice between salt and sugar at an early stage, but no one says, "Oh, this is why we put salt in it and why we didn't have it, without any salt at all." A lot of the books that I've read say you have to use the salt, and that's the end of the sentence.
Just don't ask questions.
Exactly. So they put salt in it, and they served it traditionally in wooden bowls and ate it with spoons made from horn, which I presume they would have carved themselves. And on the table, they would have the bowl of the wooden bowl with the porridge in. Most often it was an individual bowl, but in some places it was one big communal bowl. And alongside that wooden bowl of porridge, they would have a little bowl of cream or milk on the side. And then what they would do is they'd get this horn spoon, put their horn spoon into the porridge, take a scoop of the porridge, and then that was warm, obviously, at that point, then put it into the cold little bowl of milk or cream. Put that spoon in there and then eat it. So they were having the warm porridge. I guess they didn't pour the milk or the cream on it like we would, because it would cool down.
It sounds kind of amazing, because you would get the textural differences and temperature differences, and then you got the salt in there, and then milk is pretty sweet, or cream especially, that's pretty sweet. Yeah. So
it's really good.
And then those small spoons, you shared pictures of the spoons you got, and even the shape of them, I feel like you'd be tasting better, off of those little concave spoons, the way that they were shaped, almost like little tiny ladles, not really ladles, but deeper. Yeah. Wow, I'm really interested.
Yeah, we've done this more than once, definitely. Quite a lot. And the whole package, using pinhead or steel cut oats, cooking them for a long time, or doing that leaving overnight thing and reheating them, and putting salt in, produces a porridge that just is so superior in flavour. And then you've got that's really warm, like you said, and you've got the textural difference of the smooth, creamy, dairy product, and you're dipping that in. The flavour of the dairy with the salt and the kind of the porridge is still defined. It's not mushy because it's got the larger oats in it. It's been cooked properly. It's got a bite to it, and you've got the bite and the salt and the cream, and it's a different experience to just making porridge with rolled oats and putting brown sugar on it. It's a different experience. There's one more thing that I wanted to add about the Scots, which again, there's mystery over, and historians don't really know why they did this. But they ate their porridge standing up. Yeah, exactly. They must have had to reach down to the table to get their milk and that, and then
like even at home.
Yes, even at home. Yeah.
That's so weird.
Some people have said, "Oh, it's because porridge was, so revered. It was a mark of respect that they stood up to eat their porridge." Other people have said it was because it was a long-standing tradition, and they always had to be ready for kind of someone to attack them. Yeah, long-standing, great. And so they were on their guard at all times, standing up, because then they were ready to defend
themselves. A real man eats standing up.
Exactly. Exactly. But I think the most convincing explanation that I've heard is that it just comes from a time when there just wasn't enough places for people to sit because there wasn't enough furniture in the house. And so without chairs for everyone, as we have the luxury of today in most homes, we all have chairs we can sit on, but that hasn't always been the case. And so without chairs to sit on, they would stand up around the table and eat their porridge. And
the
that's
whole family's just standing there eating porridge.
Yeah.
Did they, this isn't, we're hurrying up, we're just chatting, eating, or what? I don't
know. Because we haven't got footage.
Maybe they weren't chatting. Maybe they're just focused on eating
on
their
food. Porridge.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So in those cook-offs or whatever you called it that they do they have to stand to taste it?
No, they don't.
Lame.
No, they don't. And the reason I know that is because someone last year made a film like a documentary
cool.
film of the Porridge Championships in Scotland. And over Christmas, I said to Rob and April, "You've got to watch this documentary with me."
Did you really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So we all sat down.
That's awesome.
Like, we only watch about 2 films a year. We all sat down and watched the documentary on the Porridge Championships.
Oh my gosh, did Gabriel watch it too? I bet he loved it.
He did. And you know what was?
Wow.
It was really quite funny. It was done a bit tongue in cheek. But it did go on somewhat, and Gabriel was like, "Is this finishing yet?"
Okay, I'm over it now. Another bowl of oatmeal.
No, you saw the judges. You saw the judges sitting down and eating, so they didn't stand up for that. No.
Okay.
They didn't do the milk and the cream either. So that's kind of been lost. Anyway, is that sated your Scotland?
Yeah. Now I'm
fascination.
Fascinated. Yeah. I'm going to try eating standing up.
Yeah, exactly. See if it tastes different. I wanted to throw a few other things into this last section. One of which is, don't be scared of making too much porridge, because there are many things you can do with leftover porridge. I know that Francine, who's a community supporter who's in Australia, regularly makes like double the porridge. She told me on Discord. So she makes, she does it in the Instant Pot, and she makes twice the amount she needs for one day. And then she just leaves it in the Instant Pot, I think just on the side, what isn't eaten. And then the next morning she reheats it and they have it for breakfast the next day.
She's doing that thing you said with the oats that you cook, and then the next day you heated them again. It's kind of what she's doing. Exactly.
It's the same. Yeah, it's the same thing, you know. And another thing I didn't say about Scotland is really traditionally they used to pour cooked porridge into a drawer and then slice it up during the following week and eat it. So traditionally it's been cooked in large batches and eaten cold or eaten later. You know, if you do that, you are following tradition without maybe knowing it. So yeah, don't be scared of making too much. Make too much on purpose, because there are tons of things you can do with it. Like you just said, you can reheat it. It's simple, just reheat it. And maybe you need a little bit more liquid, maybe you don't. You can slice it up and eat it like the Scots did. You could even pour it into a drawer if you want. If you do, send me a picture. I would like to see it. You can use it in a bread. It's kind of like having a scald in a bread, which I talk about in the Spelt bread book. It makes bread softer and kind of moister. So you can just, if you've got leftover porridge, you can put it into your dough and just bake it into a bread. You can put it into soup and then whiz up your soup with a blender, and it's like a creamer for your soup. You can mix it with flour or eggs and make it into a kind of a thick sort of solid batter and then fry it. You can put it in a pancake mix. So if you're mixing up some pancakes, you know, with whatever grain, and you've got some leftover oats, leftover oatmeal in the fridge, you can pour it, you know, dollop that in, kind of squash it on the side a bit to make it break up, and have it in your pancakes. There's tons of stuff that I'm going to make a list somewhere, I think, or some blog post of 99 things you can do with leftover porridge.
I want to see that. That would be amazing.
But do make
all
more
the things.
Yeah.
Could you talk just a little bit about the fermentation and oats? We kind of skirted around it a bit, but we didn't talk about why anybody would want to do it or what it actually does other than the taste.
Yeah. Okay, cool. As I said earlier, we've got episode number 70, which I'll link in the show notes, is over an hour of us just talking about fermenting oats. So if you're into it, then you will really like that episode. Just to kind of give an overview, fermented porridge tastes different, and a lot of people prefer the flavour of fermented porridge to straight porridge. Particularly if you're using standard oats, they can give you some kind of extra flavour that perhaps is, you know, lacking from a store-bought rolled oats. It's a tangy flavour, and depending on how long you ferment them for, you can have a light tangy flavour or, you know, a really heavy tangy flavour. Whilst you're fermenting, obviously probiotics are doing their stuff in there with whatever live starter you've put in there, whether it's sourdough starter, apple cider vinegar, kefir, anything that's got live bacteria. And obviously when you cook those, the probiotics have gone. But as we talk about very often on the podcast, there's survivors of the probiotics, the postbiotics and paraprobiotics that do really good things in the intestines. And you will be getting those when you're eating fermented porridge. In the process, the fermentation goodies break down the starches in the oats, and so it'll be easier for you to digest your porridge if it's fermented. And if you are able to ferment your porridge with a grain that has phytase in it, then you will also be breaking down the phytic acid. If you want to hear more about that, go back and listen to episode 70, because I explain that oats are low naturally in phytase, and so if you want to neutralize the phytic acid, you need to introduce another grain to the ferment that has high phytase, like rye or buckwheat. I do have videos on fermenting oats on my YouTube channel. So if you look up Ancestral Kitchen on YouTube, you'll find there's one called Healthy Fermented Oats and another one particularly on phytic acid, so you can watch both of those. I also have a free training called Fermenting Oats, which is a video of a conversation I had with Kirsten Shockey at the Fermentation School. If you search on my website, ancestralkitchen.com, for fermenting oats, I'll also put a link in the show notes. Then you can watch me talk about fermenting oats for an hour.
Perfect. And speaking of fermenting oats, we can't end the conversation on oats and Scotland at the same time without me asking you what is Suans, and you should explain that aspect of their culture too.
Yeah. Okay, so Suans is just amazing. It's an absolutely delicious porridge made in a particular way and has been traditional to Scotland and Wales in a slightly different rendition, and Ireland for many, many centuries. I'll put my article on Suans in the show notes, so if you want to have a dive into that, then you can read that. Suans is it's been a really big part of my oat journey. I discovered it kind of early on when I was interested in finding some non-dairy probiotic for Gabriel, because when he was very young, he really couldn't tolerate any dairy at all. That's where Boza came from, the other kind of gluten-free, dairy-free probiotic that I regularly make in my kitchen. And I found Suans at that point because the reason I noticed it was because when you make it, you get a porridge, which is called Suans, and a probiotic drink, which is called Swats. And when I saw that, I thought, oh gosh, I could have porridge for me and we could all eat the porridge, and then we could actually Gabriel could drink this Swats probiotic liquid and have homemade probiotics that don't cost the earth and haven't got dairy in them. So I know a lot of listeners know about Suans because they've done my course, which again, the show notes are going to be long for this episode. I will link in the show notes. It's a delicious porridge which was made traditionally in Scotland from waste. And how that happened was the Scots would grow their oats and then they would send them to the mill to be ground up in those stone mills that I'm talking about, and they'd be sieved into various forms of oatmeal. And then there would be a kind of the dust that was left behind and didn't make the grade, as they would say, for the different types of oatmeal. And that was basically bits of husk that was still left on the oat that hadn't come out when they tried to get the husks off, with little bits of the starchy white bit of the oat attached to them. And the miller would give back the crofters, the people who'd grown the oats, 2 bags, one with the oatmeal in, the other one with this waste in it. And rather than throw it away, the Scots fermented it by putting water in it and leaving it for up to 2 weeks.
Wow.
And then created this amazing porridge, which is so fine. I describe it as eating clouds, and so flavoursome. It's a natural fermentation. There's no starter put in it. So whereas if you're fermenting porridge oats, you would put your sourdough starter in your kefir, and your porridge is going to reflect the taste of the starter that you put in there. You know, so if you're putting rye sourdough starter in, it's kind of going to taste like you might expect rye sourdough starter, you know, cooked to taste. Whereas Suen's is different because you don't put a starter in it and it just ferments on, you know, what's naturally in the air and on the grain. It has such a delicate flavour, which predominantly tastes like honey to me, even though, you know, there's no honey in it at all. And not only do you get this amazing porridge, which is super easy to digest because it is just the white part. There's no husk or hull in it. That is sieved out in the process. And it was traditionally in Scotland used as a health food, you know, for people who were perhaps a bit weak and needed building up or needed to have a time when they didn't need to digest as much. Not only do you get this amazing porridge, which tastes like honey and is really easy to digest, but you also get swots, which is the liquid that you fermented those oats in, which you can heat up if you want or drink cold, and has a kind of a lemony flavour and is a probiotic drink, which is just, I mean, it's just, I find Suen's amazing because it's made from something that was going to be thrown away, and someone just came up with this method and then found this food that is incredibly easy to digest and has a probiotic drink too. It just
checks all the boxes.
You know, amazing, you know, amazing.
Wonderful.
Okay. So, is there anything else that I need to say, or have I said enough?
No, this is so wonderful. I feel like you've opened so many little doorways for me to peek into when it comes to porridge, and it just has so much context all over the world that it's really cool to see it kind of in that pride of place on the shelf, not just a afterthought or the shortest thing, but actually a very special and delicious ancestral treat.
It can be. It really can be. And, you know, when it's made with good ingredients and in a loving way, you know, however you choose to do that, it really can be a very special food. And I think it deserves, whether you call it oatmeal or whether you call it porridge, I think it deserves to be lauded more, for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you.
Well,
thank you for being my foil.
This was delightful. I'm always happy to listen to you talk about this history and flavor.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Andrea.
All right.
I shall see you next time.
If you'd like to support the podcast, you can join as a patron. Choose from various levels starting at $5. You can see what we offer at ancestralkitchenpodcast.com.
While you're there, check out our favourite books, supplements and kitchenware, or give a one-time donation.
Leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts.
And if you know someone who would love our show, tell them about us.
You are helping to bring ancestral food wisdom into modern kitchens, changing the world one plate at a time.